You're all welcome to the Edu-P Hangout Back to School Conference 2024. And I'm so delighted to have our wonderful presenters here in our midst and to see you all, wonderful educators and parents, joining us again this year. Our conference last year was quite interesting, mind blowing, and it's something that we're always looking back to, reflecting on all through the academic year. And it's great to begin another academic year in the month of September, and I believe this cuts across so many countries. Yes. So today we'll be having three presenters joining us in this conference. And I welcome you all specially. Thank you so much for being on time. I'm Blessing Apom, and I'm the founder of Edu-P Hangout platforms. Edu-P stands for educators and parents. So it is a platform that aims to unite parents and educators. And by doing this, we're trying to bring the home and the school together to foster collaboration and connection. So I welcome you all, dear Edu-P Hangout members, and even those who are not yet members. We hope that you will become one of our members in one of our groups on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Okay, leading this conference today is our wonderful moderator who happens to be a friend of Edu-P since inception. Yes, our very first webinar was done with Teresa Bestwick from Spain. Yes, and I'm going to share that link later on today. So you can always go to our YouTube channel to view that wonderful seminar by Teresa Bestwick. Yes, so she is going to be a moderator for this conference, and I'm very delighted to have her. Thank you so much, T, for accepting. Yeah, so she's going to introduce all our excellent speakers who are ready to share their wealth of knowledge and experiences with you all today. Once again, I say welcome. Thank you very much. Over to you, T. Thank you.
Fabulous. Yep, as Blessing said, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. So we have three fantastic speakers. And first up, we have Mrs. Mabel Okereafor. She's a registered developmental psychologist and the clinical director at Nurture Child Development Clinic in Lagos. With extensive certifications, including Hanen licensed early communication professional, certified early start Denver model therapist, and qualified behavior analyst, she specializes in the assessment, diagnosis, and evidence-based early intervention for children with autism and related disorders. Her passion lies in improving the lives of children with developmental disorders by providing access to gold standard programs and support. And she's married with 4 amazing children. So Mabel, thank you very much for joining us, and I'll hand the floor over to you. You're on mute, Mabel.
Oh, sorry. I actually thought I'd clicked on it. So thank you for that introduction, and thank you, Edu-P, for having me. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking out the time to join us this evening. Welcome to today's presentation, today's conference, where hopefully we would get to learn from each other. We have fantastic presenters coming on, and I'm going to be starting. And I know Blessing had asked if I had a slide, and I said no, because I wanted us to just sort of talk through some of the things that may be beneficial as we go on into the new school year. So I welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time this evening. So the topic I'm supposed to be speaking on is having and handling children with special educational needs. I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of one who has the privilege to meet children when they come in for assessment, either they're resuming a new school year as we're about to resume now, or they're trying to transition to a school, or they're in the midst in the middle of the school year. I'm just going to be sharing with us some of the things that I have learned over the courses of my work as an assessor, and some of the things that I know have been beneficial. So as teachers, as parents, it's September and we are all excited to be starting out. So fundamentally, how do we want to navigate the new school year? What are the things that we should be thinking about? What are the things that we should be planning to do as we go on? Especially with regards to children with special educational needs. And when we say children with special educational needs, we're looking at children with disabilities fundamentally, children that have diagnosis in autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, learning differences in terms of dyslexia, dyspraxia. You know all the different names and you know all the children that you might be meeting, because some of us have been in this field for a bit of a while. So you know those children that come with that additional need for support in terms of how to access and also show what they're able to learn. So first things first, we're talking about children and we're talking about learning. So educators, what is the first priority for us when we have children with special needs in our class? I think fundamentally, the first thing we all have to put at the back of our mind is, who is this child, right? We want to be able to be familiar with the children, right? We want to know what their strengths are. Yes, we're talking about children with some special educational needs, but they also come with strengths. What is the child able to do? What will the child be doing in your class? And how are you going to be supporting the child to access learning in your class? It all starts with what you know about the child. And what is the first level of knowledge you want to know is to build a relationship with that child beyond any documentation that the child may be coming in. Oh, the child has a diagnosis, but that's just a description, a categorization that helps you to sort of know the possibilities or the things that may be needful for that child. It doesn't speak all that there is about that child. So first things first, you want to meet this child for who they are. Do you have a maker? Do you have Ngozi? Do you have a secret in your class? Who is this child first and foremost? What are their strengths? What are their needs? You want to be able to build rapport to get to understand the unique abilities of the child. And the next point of knowing beyond that relationship is also getting to put down some parameters that will help you define your work with that child. You want to be able to engage from a knowledge perspective. Is this child coming in from a different class? The child has been in your school for some time. Is this child moving on to your class? Do they have like reports from the former class? You want to be able to know, what did they do in the last class? What is their level, their functional level? That's very critical. Is a child coming from another school? It is best practice for you as a teacher to find out from your administrators, does this child have an assessment report? It's an IEP prior to this child coming to your school, because for you to be able to take the child to the future learnings that you are planning, you have to know where the child is coming from. You have to know current baselines for the child. You have to know the documentation of their support needs. Does the child require accommodations? Would you need to modify things in the class for this child? So all of these you would be able to get and sift out from their assessment report. So we said the first thing we want to do is to start out knowing the child as an individual. The second thing we want to know exactly what this child history is in terms of their learning needs, in terms of their progress so far, in terms of their support needs in your class. So you want to be able to have all of those information at the tips of your finger. The next thing you want to be able to do as an educator is to plan, right? You want to be able to plan not just by yourself, because the beautiful thing about working with children with special needs is the fact that you get to work with other people, right? That child would require support, maybe in terms of speech, maybe in terms of occupational therapy, depending on what that child is presenting with, right? So that child possibly might be having complementary services in addition to being in your class. So you want to be able to know what are the services the child is currently receiving and how you can best support, or whatever information you can get that will enhance your work with the child. And as is common in Nigeria, for those of us that are in Lagos, Abuja, Nigeria, basically, when we have children with special needs, sometimes the child may come into your school, to your class with their learning aid. Yes. So if the child has a learning aid, you want to be able to work with that person. You want to be able to start out the school year as you're resuming. You want to have a plan to sit down and have a meeting to discuss with that individual what the plan is, what their plans are, vis-a-vis what your class curriculum is, what the content the child is going to be doing is about, so that you can have a synergy in terms of how the child is going to progress while they're in your class. In some other schools, it's not just an individual in terms of a learning aid. In some other school, you could have a learning support unit that would be providing support for that child in class. So you would like to meet with those people to say, okay, so I have Ben in my class. Ben is, I've looked at Ben's report, and this is where Ben is currently at, and these are the expectations for my class. And we'll need to sit down to see how we can synergize such that there's complementarity in terms of what we're doing for Ben. So you want to have that meeting with the child's learning support to be able to ensure that, okay, you have a map, like a plan for that child, right? And the other thing that comes up after that, when you have that meeting, is the fact that you're able to have very, very defined goals, defined objectives for the child. So it is common practice sometimes for us to have a situation where the child is in the class. Yes, this child has special learning needs, but sometimes when we do not sit down to plan, to look at the details, to fine tune and really, really document how that child's learning is going to progress from point A to point B. At the end of the day, we find a situation where the child is not able to access so much from the curriculum. The child is not able to make as much progress as they should make. So that's the essence of all of these things that we're trying to do. We're trying to gather preliminary information that will help us build a successful learning journey for that child. So you want to be able to meet. You've had your meeting. The next thing you want to do is to have the individualized learning plan for that child. You want to have an IEP, right? You want to have an IEP in terms of what are the things that this child is going to be learning. So we have Ben. If you're looking at Ben and Ben has maybe dyslexia, you're talking about a specific learning difficulties. What are the core peculiarities that's definitive of Ben's presentation that you want to put into consideration as you plan for Ben's learning for the term, for the school year? What are the things that you would need to change? How are you going to put learning across to Ben? Are you going to need to modify anything? Are you going to need to look for, is Ben someone that struggles with visual processing? Are you going to be able to, are you going to need to sort of enlarge fonts? Are you going to need to bring Ben close to the board? You want to look at your environment. You want to look at what learning is going to be specific to Ben. That's what the individualized educational plan is beyond just having the curriculum goals for the term. Is also looking at your environment and how you can curate an environment that would help Ben access as much learning as is possible. So what is Ben's unique strength and how can you use that strength to help him to learn and to succeed while he's in your class? So those are some of the things you may want to think about. So that's Ben's report. This is Ben's learning aid. Now, this is the target we want to set. But to achieve this target, it also means that we want to be able to put certain structures, certain strategies. We want to be able to make certain accommodations for Ben, right? So we've seen situations where, for instance, we've seen situations where, for instance, some children, especially children that have motor difficulties, I've had very, very funny cases as an assessor. So this child knows the contents of what is being taught in the class, right? However, because of fine motor challenges, this child is not able to write. And then the teacher and the school system would say, oh, the child cannot progress to the other class. And I'm asking myself, what happens to accommodations? Can we ask verbally and allow this child? Can we create accommodations that allow the child to vocally tell us what they know about what they have been taught, right? Can we use audios? Can we record lessons for the child to listen to and give us a feedback? So what are the different things that we want to do for Ben to be able to learn while he's in our class? So you want to be able to look at that. So Ben's case now is very much different from a child that possibly has a sensory need, maybe a child on the autism spectrum disorder, or a child that has ADHD. You want to be able to plan for the behaviors that are bound to happen. I always would say to parents and to teachers, you cannot negate considerations for behaviors that may happen in class. For instance, a child that has a high need for movement, a child that has very short attention span may not be able to learn so much if we do not build a support system that puts that behavior into consideration and how we are going to help the child to build strength in that area. Do you want to have like a behavior contract in your class? You want to establish a token system with the learning aid such that, oh, for as many times that Ben is going to remain seated on his seat and not be moving around, he's going to earn a token. Or do you want to have a situation where you can plan for movement breaks within the classroom so that you are the one that is in control of Ben's movements? And Ben is not moving out of the blues and causing some disruptions in class that will not only minimize his ability to learn, but also impact on the learning of other children in class. So those things are things sometimes that as teachers, we need to be able to decipher, to agree on, to have a plan that will state, okay, this is what we're going to do for Ben. Ben is in my class, Ben has autism, Ben has ADHD, or Ben has dyslexia. So, but Ben can learn, right? Ben can learn. And how can we make Ben learn? First and foremost, we want to be able to know what his needs are in terms of support. And we want to be able to plan as school starts. We're not waiting for the things to go south before we begin to work on them. So we want to plan, we want to reach an agreement with the support person, with the family, with the school to say, okay, this is what we're going to do for Ben. And other things you want to look at, you look at learning breaks, you look at accommodations, modifications to your curriculum. What are the things that Ben should learn? So in terms of modifications, so we have 16 topics in grade 1, for instance, and we know based on Ben's presentation, we've looked through all of these subjects and we looked at it and was okay, Ben may be able to successfully, based on history, based on data that we have in front of us, Ben can successfully work at 10 subjects, not the 15. So we want to have that already sorted out before we start the school year. So we're going to do 10 subjects. These are the 10 subjects. In each of these subjects, these are the topics that we're going to be doing with Ben. And this is how we are going to break them down so that Ben can access them, so that Ben can learn at the end of the day. So that's something we want to be able to look at as we go on. And then we've gotten that IEP. How do we measure progress? Because that's another thing that sometimes is a bit tricky and tacky. So it comes back to that IEP plan. So we've written a plan, we have all the goals, have we broken them down into achievable targets? Do we have clearly stated out success criteria? Because in my work, that's one area I have seen some level of struggle in terms of what happens in schools. How do I know that Ben is making progress? Right? Is it because Ben did not finish? So in the whole school year, Ben was supposed to do 35 topics. But if we set out to say, this is what we want Ben to do, he's going to do 10, right? What is the success criteria for each? So in terms of your teaching grammar, how many of these topics do I want Ben to gain mastery in? And how do I know? How am I going to collate the data that at the end of this term, I can say, okay, this is how far Ben has come, right? So I'm working on Ben's ability to write, do creative writing, for instance, right? So Ben typically would not do more than 10 words. If I ask him to write, Ben, write about your last summer holiday, Ben would give me 10 words. So in terms of breaking it down and measuring success, I want to be able to explicitly state out that, okay, Ben is going to give me, in terms of creative writing, Ben would be able to write out 50-word work for me, right, about his summer holiday, or anytime he's given a piece of work to do on writing, on creative writing, story writing, written expression, whatever it is that has to do with expression that has to be written. So I'm moving Ben from 10 words that he usually would do to 50 words, right? And we were going to work at it consistently. We're going to gather data over the 12-week period of the term, and like that. By the end of the school term, by the end of the school year, I can measure how far Ben has come because there was a success criteria. In terms of support also, I have to be able to measure, right? If I say, okay, I want to give Ben movement breaks, that is not going to be something that he should do all through his school year. Do I have a plan to fade out that? How am I going to fade it out? So all of these things have to be explicitly stated so that we can measure Ben's progress and Ben's journey as he moves on in the class. So basically, in terms of Ben coming into the school year as a child with special needs, these are some of the things that we want to be able to plan for. Know Ben's support needs, collaborate with Ben's learning aid, and then have a definitive plan. Not just having a plan also, but have a way of measuring progress on that plan. That is very critical. And then the final thing I want to talk about, I'm trying to just keep within my time. I'm sure by the time the other presenters come in, they'll have so much also to share with you. But the other thing I want to talk about is that partnership with the home front. It's very, very critical. In as much as we have a school system right now where children get to spend so much of their time with us, but the thing is they will still have to go back to the house. They will still have to go back home. They're still going to have weekends. They're going to have breaks. And for us to really succeed with a child, there has to be that communication back and forth between the home and the school. We have to be able to reach out to parents, have to share their child's journey as the child is making progress, and to be able to get feedback from home, find out how the child is doing and how much of that learning they're applying into their daily lives. What are the struggles at home? So sometimes you might send those assignments home and mom comes and they return the homework, but they don't even tell you anything. They just chuck it into the child's bag and send it back to you. Like we say in Nigeria parlance, back to sender, they give it back to you. Like, so you want to be able to find out, okay, what happened with the assignment, and let the parents be able to share with you what their difficulties were. And then you can also tell them how you do it with Ben to get Ben to do it. Do you have a reward system? Do you have a reinforcement system? And then sometimes you want to be able to find out from parents, okay, what is the structure at home? It will amaze you. A lot of our children, from what I've seen, really do not have structured schedules at home. So sometimes parents struggle how to manage all the other distractions around the child and then getting the children to do work from school. But when you take time to have these conversations with the family, you can find out what Ben does after his school hours and work out with mom or dad how to cut down on device hour, how to have a proper structure that will ensure that homework time gets to be factored in, and then work is on a continuum, right? So you want to be able to have that partnership with families. You want to be able to get feedback from home, share feedback, because at the end of the day, it's a team, okay? And Ben is at the middle of all of those dynamics. So the teacher, the school system, the support people, the family is all a team that is working together to help Ben succeed. So we want to be able to see that as teachers, as educators, we're able to look at all of those things and cover this ground. And as parents, we want to be upfront in terms of sharing information. I'm aware that this is not just a platform for educators, but also a platform for parents. It's also important upfront, right? For families to be able to put all the details out there for the teacher to know what's happening. And then I would like to clarify for parents here, right? We want to make the work of our educators easier. And what do I mean by this? The fact that Ben is in school, that Ben is receiving special education support, does not mean Ben no longer needs therapy. Okay? Every learning that you want to happen for Ben is going to be built on Ben's developmental progress, as Ben makes progress on his communication goals, as Ben makes progress on his fine motor goals, as Ben makes progress on his social emotional targets, which this therapist would work on, then Ben can better access and perform, achieve better with his academics. So please, I want to appeal to parents on the platform, right? So the teachers will teach, the teachers will support learning, but Ben would also need therapy. So you have to be able to plan not just for learning, but also for therapy support, so that while therapy is going on, it is complementary, right? And then progress can happen, a well-rounded progress can really happen for Ben. So another thing I want to say to parents, like I was sharing with Blessing, this period, right? Assessment. So for some families, the first assessment you did was the diagnostic assessment. After that, you haven't done any assessment. Assessment is something that is dynamic and ongoing. It's not a one-off event. If you're a parent, you're an educator, the child with special educational needs to have regular re-evaluations and psychoeducational assessments at that. What does that do for the child? It helps you to monitor progress, one. It also helps you to pinpoint specific areas of struggle that that child may be going through, so that intervention can be targeted, right? Intervention can be specific to that area. I give you a classic example. So if you say a child is not doing well in English language or literacy, as we choose to call it in the nursery areas, if that child is not doing well, there's so many areas that could be impacted. So if you want to do intervention, you want to be able to know the specific area where the child is struggling. Is it grammar and punctuation? Is it written is it phonological awareness, listening comprehension is struggling with? If you have that detail from your assessment, right, from a psychoeducation assessment, then you can share with the school team, and the school team can build support around that area. It's not a generic thing, it's something that is specific to Ben, because this is an assessment that has given us a full and clear picture of where Ben is and where Ben is struggling and where intervention needs to be focused on. So I want to encourage all the parents on the call, please go for evaluation. The beginning of every school year is a good time assessment to go and check, where is my child? Okay, so my child failed math. What area of math is that? And take that information back to the school. Hopefully, I've not overshot my time. So basically, those are some of the things I wanted to share with us today. I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'll be glad to take questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There were such great ideas there, Mabel. We have had a couple of questions. So Nabil Mohammed says, sometimes parents might not accept that their child has special needs. How can a teacher closely work with a parent in such situations?
Okay, so do I take the questions one after the other? Great, okay. So the best practice is for schools to have a requirement, right? A system in place that you would use to identify children that have needs. Okay, that's best practice. And it's not easy for parents to just accept, because it's a lot of emotional and psychological thing that is going on with the parent. So we must understand that. But how can you go about that if first and foremost your school does not have a policy or a procedure or a process that helps children like that to be identified? Nothing speaks better than the data. Data speaks all the things you need to speak. You just need to have a collation of how this child is faring, what the child is struggling at. Just look at it. And remember, the first sign of a child struggling is not where we begin to call the parents and begin to say something is wrong. We must have been able to provide a level of support. We must have been able to call the parents in to say, okay, it looks like Ben is struggling with this, and this is what we are currently doing to see that he makes progress. If you look at his test score from last time, his exam scores, he's performing very low, and this is what we are going to do right? No parents will argue with that. So you've done that, you've provided support, and then you call them. It's a discussion. It's an ongoing process of dialoguing and getting them to see. So we've done this, and Ben is still having struggles in this area. This is what the performance is supposed to be, and this is what the expectation for his class is, but he keeps falling behind. Even after the support that we have done, what have you noticed? Find out from them also, right? And when they get back to see you to say, okay, this is what I've also seen, then you're having a conversation. Okay, do you want to check? The other thing is sometimes parents don't even know where to go. So you want to be able to also have a resource list of people that they can see and talk to about their child to say, okay, this is what we want your child to succeed. You must make them see that you are doing all of it in the best interest of the child and not just trying to put a label on their child. So we want your child to succeed, especially as they go to the next transition term. We want them to be able to do well. Can you please go and check? So your school has to, it's not a teacher that does that. It's something that is done at the school management level, where the admin and everybody gets to communicate, or whoever the key person is gets to communicate. Okay, we're recommending for your child to do this assessment, go to this place. They have specialists who will do the assessment, and whatever they tell you, you come back to us. Parents will be all glad so long as you're part of that process with them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mabel. So leading on from that, Grace asked, could you provide any helpful links or resources for learning how to teach students with needs for schools and for parents that don't recognize these needs? Maybe just because we want to move on to the next speaker as well, if there are any useful links, perhaps Mabel can add them into the chat. But as she said as well, this is something that should be happening at the school administration level, the school management level. So Mabel, one more question that's just come in is from Esther. She says, one of my children is having a serious reading challenge and he's 8 years old. What best support can I give him?
Okay, so the first support, the best support is to get the child a diagnosis, right? What have you done? You've done the phonics, and then you want to be able to pinpoint, you want to be able to be sure that there's actually a problem going on. And there's no way to know that except that child goes through an assessment. Assessment data tells you, okay, this is what the issue is, and this is the areas that need to be worked on, right? So the first thing you need to do is to refer that child for an assessment, right? If you've done your phonics, if you've checked, do an assessment. So also check the child's history. Sometimes I've discovered also that sometimes children have a poor foundation, maybe due to school transitions. Some children are moving from a school to another school where they don't have a very structured, so they're coming from a school where they don't have a structured reading program to a school where it's more structured and streamlined. So sometimes there may be that struggle. So you want to be able to pinpoint. You can do your own assessment. Is this child able to recognize the phonic sound? Is this child able to blend? Can this child segment? Right? So when you've done all of these things and you've provided the first level support and the child is still not making progress, and then when we say reading, you say the child is 8 years old. You also, is it reading comprehension? Right? If it's reading comprehension, you want to work on the child's vocabulary, right? Because if the child has gaps in vocabulary, it's also a problem. If the child has difficulties with decoding sounds, it's going to be a problem. So basically, I would recommend the first step, just get the child assessed so that we know exactly where the issues are, and then you can target that. That's one way to help that child.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mabel. That was a really fascinating chat. For those of you that joined partway through, Blessing is recording this and she's going to upload it to her YouTube channel afterwards. So moving on to our next speaker. Next up is Rashidat Sadiq. She's a language teacher and academic coordinator at ICICE Al Noor Academy in Abuja. She's an English language teacher, a literacy advocate, a reading coach, a fantastic storyteller, and a materials writer who runs a mobile library. She also trains teachers on learner-centered pedagogy with a focus on utilizing emotional intelligence to derive learning outcomes. She's a champion of public speaking and has had the opportunity to share her knowledge at various national and international conferences. So we're very grateful that she's taken the time to come and join us today. Over to you, Rashida.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. It's an honor. Thank you, Blessing, for inviting me. And Mabel, that was a great discussion, very thought-provoking and very detailed. Thank you. All right, so I will be sharing my slides. And today I'd like to talk about emotional intelligence for school stakeholders. I'd like to confirm if you can see my slides, please.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Okay, so we're going to start this journey with a story. Like Teresa said, I love stories. Once upon a time, deep in the jungle, there lived so many animals, united, collaborating with each other. They knew the laws of the land, and there was peace. The mighty elephant was known as the king of the jungle, and everybody respected him. And he, in turn, was a respectable and respectful leader. In the forest, they had this narrow bridge on the way to the waterhole. And the bridge was so narrow that only one animal could cross at a time. They had an unwritten rule that whoever stepped on the bridge first got to cross over, and anyone else at the other end had to wait. Now, one day, Bo said to those gathered at the waterhole, "I am the mightiest and fiercest in the jungle, and I can take on anyone, even the so-called mighty elephant." All the animals laughed. "Are you okay, Bar? He's so big and you're so puny. Can you see the size of your tusks compared to his? And you want to take him on?" And Bar, yes, was so proud and said he could. So they all waited, as they knew that the elephant would soon be coming to the waterhole. And just as the elephant stepped onto the bridge, the boar rushed over and got to meet him in the middle of the bridge. Everybody was stunned. "What is Boar doing? We know that whoever steps on the bridge first gets to cross." And Boar said to Elephant, "Elephant, I challenge you in front of all the animals of the jungle. I can take you on and I will defeat you. And if I do, you need to show me some respect forever." Elephant smiled and looked around and looked down at Boar. And then he shuffled back off the bridge. All the animals were shocked. Was the elephant really afraid of the tiny boar? Yes, he was rough. Yes, he was tough, but he was puny. Well, after the boar had crossed, Elephant went over and got his water, and on his way back, they all gathered around him. "Mr. Elephant, why on earth did you step back? Why didn't you trample little boar under your huge feet?" And the elephant looked at them and smiled and said, "I know he's puny. I know I could take him on, but he's filthy. He stinks. If I had tangled with him, I would have gotten dirty with all that mud, and I would have been stinky too. I didn't have time for him, so I just let him be. He can suit himself. I am self-aware, and I know my strengths." The end. So I'm going to be coming back to that story as we talk about emotional intelligence. So what exactly is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is that capacity, that ability to understand our own feelings and the feelings of others, for motivating others, and for motivating ourselves, and for managing our emotions effectively in our relationships. So basically, it's that ability to understand your feelings and the feelings of others. So I guess from my story, you could say that the elephant had high emotional intelligence. He knew what Boer wanted. He knew that Boer wanted to feel important. He knew that Boer had an agenda, and he didn't have time for that. He was able to manage his own emotions, and he was able to manage that relationship at that point in time with Boer and with all the other animals. So just like the infograph here says, emotional intelligence has to do with understanding emotions, managing emotions, using our emotions positively, and perceiving the emotions of others. There are 4 core components of emotional intelligence, and they can be broadly divided into 2, those regarding ourselves and those regarding others. So here we have those for ourselves. The first one is self-awareness. How much do you know about yourself? And then the next one is the action related to that awareness. How do you manage yourself and your emotions? The next one has to do with others, and that is social awareness. What do you know about the norms in the society? What do you know about the people around you? And then what action do you take? How do you manage the relationships with those people? And very, very important in a school setting for all school stakeholders, we have to be able to manage relationships because there are so many stakeholders that I'm sure I can't cover them all, but in this presentation, I try to talk about the students, I try to talk about the teachers, the school leaders, the parents, but we also have, you know, the community as a whole. We are all stakeholders in the education sector. So what exactly is self-awareness? I think I tried to talk about that. It's that ability to, you know, understand your own feelings, understand yourself. What are your triggers? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And there are 3 main components: emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, and self-confidence. So some of us actually are not so aware of ourselves. We think either too highly of ourselves or we think too little of ourselves. So let's really go down to notice how we do things and to help our learners also notice things around them, their feelings. Self-management, that is the ability to understand the emotion. What is your emotion telling you? Because these emotions are actually messengers. They're telling us something. And then how do we use them? So under the competencies here, we have emotional self-control, positive outlook, adaptability, and achievement, or that ability to be innovative, to be initiative. Then we have social awareness. This involves awareness of others' feelings. I talked about that. Within that, we have empathy. We have organizational awareness. What is the culture in the school? What are the norms in the area where you're living in? So if you're living, for example, or working in an area where they have majority, maybe Muslims, in the region, you know that they want their girls to probably be covered, you know that they don't want maybe females shaking hands with males, or they don't eat pork. Things like that. You are aware of what is acceptable in the surrounding. In the West, you may know that, okay, to show respect, you have to kneel or bow and things like that. That is under social awareness. And then social responsibility. You need to look outwards. What can we do for the society? How can we, things around conservation, around volunteering, all of this comes under social awareness. And then we have relationship management, is that ability to, should I say, get the desired or desirable responses from others, because we definitely cannot control what other people feel or however they behave, but we can control our own reactions, our own actions. And within the skills for relationship management, we have communication skills, that willingness to develop others, to mentor others, to coach others, leadership, wanting to change, but from within, so not in a forced way, but being a catalyst and a motivator for positive change. To skills around conflict management and collaboration, negotiation, all of that. Why do we need emotional intelligence in schools? Emotional intelligence enhances academic performance. If learners know their strengths, know how they study best, are able to control their feelings and emotions, they will be able to focus in class, Mabel was talking and she talked about the fact that Ben may need to walk around. Ben is aware, the teacher is aware, we make allowances for him to do that, and he's able to improve in his academic performance. It also promotes better communication, because if you're aware of your feelings, you can actually tell other people what you feel, why you feel that way, what you would want. It also supports emotional regulation, fosters empathy and compassion. You're able to really feel for the other person. You're able to show kindness. It improves teacher-student relationships. You're not bringing your frustrations from home onto the student. If you're emotionally intelligent, you know that personal issues should not be bottled up with work issues. Even though they're still within you, you find a way to separate them. And you also know that students may have their issues coming from home. You're more considerate of such issues, and you teach them how they can also regulate themselves. It reduces bullying and conflict within the school. It strengthens the social skills of the learners. They know how to interact with others. They know how to interact if they go to a new and different place, because you teach them that basic skill of social relationship management and social awareness. It encourages a positive school climate. It increases emotional resilience and supports lifelong learning and success. I'm not sure how well I'm doing for time. I have a lot here, but I may not read everything. What are teachers supposed to do? We need to be good models. We need to show good emotional intelligence. We can't lose it in front of the learners. We need to be self-aware. We need to be able to manage our emotions. We need to be supportive and encouraging in our classrooms. We need to provide feedback to the learners. Oh, you need, I understand that you are angry. I think you should take a break. I think you did this well. I think you can do this better. We need to integrate EI into some of the lessons that we teach, into our lesson plans, actually. So this can be done, you know, just as an add-on, or it can be done really deliberately, and we explicitly teach emotional intelligence to the learners. Let's encourage them to also reflect. We can reflect aloud. Let's facilitate peer relationships and talk about good ways of solving conflicts and resolution and resolving problems without being violent. What can parents do? I know we have parents in the house. We can't leave it all to the school. We also know that education starts from the home. We need to model positive emotional behavior. We need to encourage our children to be able to express themselves. How do you feel? Are you happy? Are you excited? And we need to teach them the different nuances of emotions. We need to teach them empathy. We need to model all of these. We need to be there for them. We need to validate their feelings and then try to help them through those feelings. All right, we need to also be there for them. Let's listen to them. A lot of us as parents are not really present. We're on our phones and the children are telling us things. We don't even bother to ask how school was. We just ask about the homework. Have you done your homework? Okay, good, bye-bye. But we need to listen to them. We need to ask them questions that make them share with us and tell us about their emotions. How did you feel when you got to school? How do you feel now that you're back? We need to also teach them to set boundaries around things that are acceptable. So it's not acceptable to break things when you're angry. It's not acceptable to hit people because you're sad. All of that, we need to start telling them all the way from home. We need to reinforce positive emotional behavior. So, oh, I noticed that you were upset, but you tried to be calm. You tell them that was a good thing, and you help them know that, oh, that's the way to go. We need to teach them things to do when there are going to be issues, there are going to be challenges. So we need to teach them resilience. We need to teach them how to face it. How do you face it? Sometimes you can share some of your own problems so that they know they're not the only ones. And we teach them what to do. Take a deep breath. Let's go for a walk together. Okay, let's watch a cartoon. Let's listen to some music. And then we need to create opportunities for positive social interactions. All right, school leaders also have to play a big role in ensuring that the entire school is able to show emotional growth. We have to promote a positive school culture. There are some schools where the teachers are so scared of doing anything outside of what you as the leader has put in place, and it shouldn't be so. Another one I know that even in where I work, we struggle with. Sometimes we've made decisions at the management level and we don't realize that we're not carrying the other members of staff along and you're just informing them of the decision, but that's not really effective communication. And sometimes you find out that you don't even inform them on time and they're confused when you bring out a law or when you say something. We also have to find a way to make sure that all conflict is resolved in a good manner. Have to try to build strong relationships, build rapport. We need to show empathy and understanding for the staff. They have their problems, but they still show up. They need to teach children. We shouldn't be the ones stressing more. And we should be open enough for them to want to share with us, because that's another problem. A lot of staff are afraid to share with their leaders the problems they're facing. And then the leaders, they don't know these staff are struggling. They're just doing their best under the conditions and they still blame them that they're not doing enough. So we need to be open. And then we need to also show self-regulation. We are not, we shouldn't take things out on the teachers. We shouldn't berate them in front of the learners or in front of the parents. We have to consider all sides in decision making. We have to have that 360 perspective. Okay, from the perspective of the teacher, how is the decision going to be? From the perspective of the student, from the perspective of the parent, from the perspective of other school leaders, who is it affecting negatively, who is it affecting positively? Is the overall outcome beneficial to all? You have to be willing to motivate and inspire others, because times will come. Teaching is a really tough job and a lot of teachers are close to burnout. We as school leaders need to find a way to reach out to them, to motivate them. Even before they tell us they're burning out, we should be able to notice and we should be able to do things to actually avoid them reaching that space. Well-being, very, very important. Let's support their well-being and let's be leaders that would foster innovation and growth. Let's be willing to take a chance on our teachers, take a chance on our learners. Let's not be too rigid. Let's also allow input from the parents. That is emotional intelligence from school leaders. What are some practical activities that we can do? So within the school, you can have a feelings check-in, maybe as the children are coming in the morning or midway through the day. Let's teach them these various feelings. You know, let's be specific about the feelings. Sometimes we think we're sad, but we're actually not sad. We're just feeling guilty that we did something wrong. Excuse me. And we can do something as easy as using thumbs up or thumbs down for a feelings check. And if you're feeling good, let me have a thumbs up. If you're feeling bad, let me have a thumbs down. If you're just okay, let's have it in the middle. Just something as simple as that can be quickly done. Sometimes we can use emojis. We can also have morning meetings and circle time to talk about our mornings, to talk about things that are on our minds. And we can do this with the staff also. We can do it with the children. We can have moments for mindfulness and meditation, guided imagery, mindfulness coloring, all of these that help us to calm down and regulate our emotions. We can do mindset work. So we talk about growth mindset, we give affirmations, we talk about all of that. Then we set routines and procedures that make it easy for us to regulate our emotions. Storytelling, I love, is a very good way to talk about emotions, to show different scenarios that have happened, either real life or folk tales or fairy tales, and role play is also very good. So I have 3 activities here that connect with some of these things. So we have the empathy game. The empathy game is like a role play. Now put yourself in your friend's shoes and imagine how they might feel. Your friend just had a successful surgery and you ask the learners to either write down or discuss in their pairs how they think their friend would feel, or the friend would be relieved, maybe the friend will be sore, in pain. They'll have different things to talk about it, but it's just about trying to understand the feelings of others. How would a friend who just got a new phone feel? How would a friend who just got bullied feel? How would a friend who just moved to a new school feel? Lonely, all of that. So then they can relate when they see somebody else who just moved to a new school. They remember that game and like, oh, maybe I should say hi to this person. We also have things like brainstorming. How would you feel if what and what so thing happened to you? And then you can have strategies that you'd suggest. Oh, if I was embarrassed, I would laugh it off. I would leave the room. I would cry. They'd say different things, but then you have to talk about, okay, which one actually works? Which one is useful? And then when it does happen, or if it does happen, they already have like a 4 idea of the strategies that they could use to manage such emotions. The last one is a story connection. Stories are very, very good for building empathy and emotional intelligence. And these are some of the questions that you can ask after telling a story. So I could ask, from my story at the beginning, how do you think the elephant felt? How do you think the boar felt? Why did the boar behave that way? Why did the elephant behave that way? What would you have done in that situation? How would it have ended if the elephant actually fought with the boar? How did you feel when the animals came to meet the elephant and he explained to them? So all of that are just questions that you can use to help the learners relate and connect to the story and really get that emotional intelligence from that. So with that, I have come to the end. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
What a fantastic session, Rashida. Lots of very practical ideas there at the end, and everyone was commenting on how fabulous your storytelling skills are.
Thank you.
We have had a couple of questions come in. So it's kind of the same question, but from different perspectives. So Tadesse says, most African parents don't receive formal education. Having this in mind, how do you think these parents can help their children develop emotional intelligence?
Thank you very much. I think that's a great question. Even for those of us that had formal education, emotional intelligence is a skill we need to develop, and it's a process. Even after listening to this talk, you're going to try, but it's still a process. I'm also still working on myself. We need to reflect all the time. So I think it's about raising awareness. And that's why I love what Blessing is doing with bringing all of us to talk about different topics around inclusion, around emotional intelligence. Some of us went to school, we have PhDs, but we still raise our children the same way we were raised because we don't know any better. We still behave and react the same negative, aggressive manner because we don't know any better. In Nigeria, the mantra for this year is no grief for anybody. That is not an emotionally intelligent mantra. You know, we need to rephrase it. So emotional intelligence is not about allowing people to step all over you, but it's about taking ownership of your own emotions and expressing those emotions in a way that is non-confrontational and with a view to solving the problem, not violence everywhere. Excuse my Nigerianism.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, leading on from that, obviously we've talked about from the parents' point of view, from the students' point of view, and you mentioned as well how teachers can help the students. So Mara asks, what strategies can teachers employ to manage their own emotions when dealing with difficult students?
Thank you. That's tough. And that's some of the practical tips I talked about using for students actually works with us also. So let's always take a step back. Take a deep breath. Before you do anything, try to just pause. So let's not react, let's act. So take a deep breath. And in that deep breath, try to process what is happening. Is this the best time to respond to this? So like I said, emotional intelligence is not necessarily about keeping short, but it's about finding the best way to address things, being socially aware. So let's make that conscious effort sometimes to leave our baggage either at the door or at the school gate. It's not easy. There will be triggers. Some students are actually mean. Some school leaders are mean, but you need to be the one to rise above, and it takes training. Like I said, it's a process. Once in a while, you may find that you've lost it, but you should also be able to catch yourself on time once you're more aware. And if you're aware of your trigger, sometimes you need to step away. Sometimes it's okay to just step away from that place, from that thing. Look for a friendly face. Look for someone you can vent to. Someone said, type an angry email, but don't send it. Write an angry letter and then burn it up. So that allows you to sort of vent, and then you can take another perspective and try to see it from the perspective of the other person. Not an easy task, but we as teachers need to really try. And then we need to try to avoid burnout. We talked about building healthy boundaries. Sometimes you need to know and say it in a polite enough way that I'm sorry, I cannot take on this extra task because, and you give a reason why. Or you give a realistic timeline. Okay, I will be happy to do this task. However, I have a lot of work on my plate right now. Can it be done by next week? You need to set some healthy boundaries for yourself. You need to know what you can do, know your abilities. I talked about knowing your strengths and your weaknesses.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Rashida. We've got time just for one more quick question. So how do you manage a situation where management doesn't show emotional intelligence towards staff?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And that's also may need to be about building awareness. Sometimes the management is not aware. Sometimes they are aware, but they're looking at you as teachers from these teachers are lazy. These teachers just all want to collect our money and not do what they're supposed to do. So we may need to seek for collaboration and help. So if you do have a board that is friendly, you can try to approach a member of the board, approach a member of the PTA, approach a friendly parent, or just look within the management staff and see that one person that may be able to understand your perspective from the standpoint of the teachers. It's also tough because I've had some teachers come in like wanting to almost, like, we don't have unions, but almost wanting to gang up against the leadership because they were unfairly dealt with. But I tell them ganging up may not be the way. Let's try to find a way that we can all sit down and address it. And yeah, it's easier said. There are some school managements that, especially the private schools, find that they just tell you, this is my school and it's going to be my way or the highway. And in some cases, you may have to take the highway. But before that is done, we need to find as many other options as possible for conflict resolution, for giving them the information, because I always like to imagine that they're not aware. And then sometimes we also put ourselves in their shoes. If I was in management, what would I do? If I own a school tomorrow, how would I look at it? That sometimes helps you to get a better perspective and to know how to approach them, to how to convince them to your needs. That, okay, I know that because you're in management, you're doing this and you want the best for the school. However, the teachers are being overworked and you need to give us this, or you need to try to help them with that. And that may help them see that, okay, you're thinking of the benefit of the school and you also want everybody to benefit. So let's just see how we can work as a team and just lay the cards open, get everybody on the table for discussions if possible. That's the best way to go about it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. There was one more question about managing low resource environments and working with parents and with staff in those sorts of contexts. Unfortunately, I think we probably should move on now to Salome's talk. But perhaps, Rashida, if you want to add any more links in the chat for ideas for where people can find resources, that would be fantastic.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Great. So thank you very much to Rashidat Sadiq. And now we're on to our third speaker of the evening. And this is Salome Ikokoyo. She is an experienced educator with 20 years of teaching and 14 years of teacher training experience. She heads the education unit at a private college of education and holds leadership roles in ELTAN. Salome is passionate about educational technology, particularly integrating ICT and AI into English language teaching. So, Sally, over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Blessing, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to share my slides, please.
Yep, you should be able to share away, Salome.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, we can see them. Thank you.
Sorry?
We can see them. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening once again, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'll be talking on low resource IT tools for educators. The objective for this presentation is exploring cost-effective IT tools for low-resource educational settings, demonstrating integration of tools with minimal digital infrastructure, empowering educators to use OER, UDL, and offline platforms for improved learning, and discussing how parents can support teachers and learners, especially in present-day Nigeria. So what low-cost IT tools can teachers use? Are there any you have started using? Are there any you're using currently? Would you like to share them with us in the chat, please? So I'll be reading the chats to see if you have any you'd like to share with us. Okay, WhatsApp, MP3, Telegram, great. Thank you very much. So I'll share a few of the ones I have here. So I have a few here: Mentimeter, Kahoot, Flip, Google Docs, WhatsApp, etc. I learned when I started learning how to use Mentimeter, Kahoot, and so on. I realized that it wasn't really practical for my learners, especially the secondary learners, because we don't let them come to school with their phones, so it's difficult using those ones. And for my tertiary learners, I find that it keeps them very active. It keeps them interested in the lesson. It keeps them on their toes every time, because you have just a few seconds to respond to questions. But I don't have that access for my secondary learners. So I started thinking of ways to make my classes interesting, make my classes interactive. And I came up with these ideas of using pictures and audios, videos, flashcards. So for the pictures, I come to classes with pictures. I'm going to teach this topic next week. So this week, I'm coming to class with pictures. For instance, let's say I'm going to teach nouns in the next class. I come to class with pictures of nouns, different types of nouns, and I post them all around the walls of the classroom. So my learners come to school in the morning and they look at the pictures, they go around, and all through that week, they are thinking about what this next class is going to look like. And by the time it's time to take that class, I find that they are already prepared mentally. They are ready. They come up with examples, they come up with answers to questions that I give to them, and it makes it very easy for me. Then the next thing I try to do is I used videos, and that worked very well with my literature classes. That's when I started using videos. I want to teach a Shakespearean play, for instance. It started with Macbeth, when they were reading Macbeth then. And I thought about how I could get these students to read. You know, Shakespearean texts are really very boring to read. The English is so archaic. And I couldn't find a way to make them read it so they can, respond to questions in external exams. So I thought of using videos. It was difficult downloading the videos at that time. I had to look for I tried a lot of ways to get the videos out and play them in the class. I come to class with my laptop and we watch the videos. Wherever we stop, we continue the next time. I group the students and then we respond to questions and so on. That's how I started using videos and tried to improve on using these videos. Then there is flashcards. I use flashcards when I teach vocabulary. I make them draw pictures, like I group them and I say, you this group, you're going to give me pictures of this. If you can't buy a cardboard paper, get a calendar, use the back of the calendar and draw this picture and draw this picture and draw this picture. And we're going to post it in the class. And the best group is going to get 10 marks for this classwork. And by the time I come to the class, you'll be amazed at the kind of pictures that I have in my class. And it helps them remember these words. It helps them remember the vocabulary for this particular lesson and so on. And then the next one that I have learned to use, and it has been amazing for me, is the Google Lens. In fact, it has made my work as a teacher really very easy. This Google Lens is wonderful for us as English teachers. For my context in the public school where I teach, my learners don't buy texts. It's not really about not having the money to buy. It's just that they really think it's not that important. And that's a challenge for me as a teacher because I don't know how to teach literature or perhaps reading comprehension without a text. I am the only one that does the talking. I'm the only one that has to do everything. So this Google Lens has been great. It has been a great access for me this past section that I started using it. How do I use the Google Lens? You can download it on Play Store, and there are a lot of ways in the phone that you can use it. It comes with Google phones, actually. So you can just download that Google Lens app on your phone, and you can take pictures of the text you want to share with your learners. Just take a picture of the text, and then you go to your Google Lens, you copy the text, highlight the text, the part of the text that you want to copy, and then you copy the text. And then the next thing is to paste it somewhere in a Word document, and you search for a text-to-speech tool that you can use. Now, you can just simply copy this and use it, but I prefer to search for free text-to-speech tools. You can use any you want. There are, this example, 11 Labs, and there's TTS or something like that. Yes, TTX Maker. And you can paste your text on this. These are free tools that we can use directly online. And then you can now convert it. It gives you a point where you click and convert the text to speech, and then you download. Now, when you have downloaded this, it becomes very easy. You can use it wherever you want. You can save it on your flash drive. You can save it on your phone. You can save it anywhere you want. And then you can play it directly to your learners. So for comprehension questions, for comprehension passages, I simply write the text on the questions on the board. And then my learners listen to the passage, the audio passage. I don't need to read it again. They just listen to the passage, and then they can work with it. They can respond to the questions. And for literature passages, I do the same thing. And that makes it so much easier for me. Then the next thing we're going to talk about is the OER and the UDL designs for learning. Now, we know that in our sub-Saharan African context, we have large classrooms, very large classrooms, and it becomes a challenge many times to cater to the needs of all these learners. It's challenging to be able to tell which learner has this learning disability and which learner has this other learning disability. I was talking with a guardian last week, and she was complaining that her word cannot read, and what's going to be done to assist these words to learn how to read. And you know, she was asking, do I think the child should be taken to a lower level so that she can learn how to read at that point? And I was like, no, it's not really necessary. I think we're placing too much emphasis on being very intelligent, being very bright. This child can write her name. So it's not really that every child has to be excellent in academics. Have we tried to find out what other things this child is interested in doing? I discovered that this child likes business. She knows how to go out and source for things that she could sell. And she has a way with words. She has a way with her marketing strategy that even if she's selling at 500 Naira and others are selling at 300 Naira, people still buy from her. And she's a little girl who is just assisting her mother. So I said, why don't we explore these other ways? This child is brilliant in this way. Why don't we look at how we can help this child? So when we have learners like this in our classroom, it becomes challenging. You cannot tell what challenges each child has. So that's where these open educational resources come in. That's where UDL, Universal Design for Learning, comes in. Combining all of this makes it a lot more easier for you to be able to address the learning needs of each child in the classroom. So those who are very good with listening, you know, like I discovered that if I listen, I do very well. I remember a lot more than just than reading. But the reading helps me corroborate what I have heard. So there are learners like this. We discover these without really making too much effort in getting each child to without looking for a way of identifying the needs of each child when you have over 100 learners in your classroom. So when you use pictures, you use videos, you use audios, you're able to address the learning needs of almost everyone. And then the few that may not really have that these ones will not address. You're able to address them individually because there are no longer so many, and you're able to do this. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how parents can help. I've discovered that one of the challenges teachers have is parents' support. When I started using WhatsApp to teach my secondary learners, parents resisted. Many of the learners don't have their own smartphones, so they give me the phone number of their parents. And in fact, many of them didn't tell me this was the phone number of their parents. It just gave me the impression that it was their phone. So I started sending them notes, started sending them things that they could share with their own group. Sorry, excuse me. And then the parents resisted, but they didn't come up to say, I don't like what this teacher is doing. None of them called to say, why are you sending my child this kind of learning materials, or why are you sending my child notes, or why are you sending my child this? No parent called. But instead, at the PTA meeting, a parent was really very angry. She didn't even know I was the teacher in question. So she came up with her complaints and was bitter. So when I responded to her, she was shocked. I had to explain why I was taking these new methods of teaching. And at that point, she agreed with me and was like, okay, I'm going to cooperate. I'm going to let my child do this. So I think that it is important for parents to communicate with teachers. If there's something your child comes home with, and my teacher says this, my teacher says that, I think it is important you call the teacher. If the teacher maybe is unable to call, the parents should call. What's this new thing my child is coming home with? What's this new idea that you're projecting to my learners? The teacher would be able to explain. I think it's important for parents to realize that teachers are not their enemies. Teachers are not your enemies as parents. We are here to help your children. We're doing the best we can. We think of ways to make sure that your children learn. We think of the best ways to help them grab what we're teaching. And so I think it is important for parents to maintain open communication with teachers and then create a conducive learning environment at home. It's very important. I know that the children have to do chores at home. They need to do some work when they get to the house, but they also still need to do their assignments. They also need to do their work. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for the teacher to be able to assess to what extent the lesson has been successful and so on. And parents should also support school rules and policies. If we say we don't want children to come to school with phones, please respect that. There are reasons for it. I learned of a story recently of a school where the school says no phones. But the parents gave this child a very sophisticated device to come to school with. And the device got lost in the school. And then the parents felt that a teacher must have seized the phone. And then they came in with the police and they beat up this teacher. And the school owners did not do anything about it. They were just watching while their teacher was being manhandled by the police. I think it's really unfair. If the school says no phones, please respect that. And if your child's phone gets lost, why not scold your child? Why did you come to school with the rule with your phone when the school says no phones? Rather than, begin to treat teachers like they are less human than you are. Then there is promote digital literacy. I know that a lot of parents are not familiar with these new things we're bringing up, with the new digital tools we're using to help learning. But since after COVID, we've had to use this. For instance, in Nigeria today, the fuel price is crazy. Transportation for teachers to their workplace is also rising so high. Many schools are now looking at ways of using online teaching platforms for their learners, so the teachers won't have to spend so much on transportation and all of this. Now, parents can try to learn some of these some of these new ways of learning, of teaching, so they can assist their children and make the work easier for the teachers. Thank you.
Fantastic. What amazing ideas. You've shared so many practical tools there, Salome. So yeah, and we've had a really interesting question come through. So obviously you talked about how sometimes students aren't allowed to use their smartphones in class. But Tadesse asks, what about what are the alternatives? For example, if families can't afford smartphones, how else could they bring ICT into the classroom if they don't have access to those devices?
Okay, I know that not all families can afford smartphones or devices, but usually we group learners. We put them into groups where one or two would have these devices and they live close to one another so they can easily share. So if your child is in this category and is in a group where there's someone close to the house that he or she can share with, I think it's okay. Now, if you won't allow your child go to the homes of these kids, could you invite those other kids to your home? Could you give them an environment where they could, they could share these resources with your child in your home if you feel it's not convenient for your child to go to their homes? I think that's one way of addressing this issue.
Yeah, fantastic advice. And what you were saying again about building that homeschool connection. And similarly, Rashidat in her talk, she talked about, all the different stakeholders. It's the students, the teachers, the families, the wider community as well. So perhaps there are alternatives within the community to help support the learners. Fantastic. And then Nebil says, how could teachers introduce digital citizenship before or while using EduTech in their classrooms?
Okay. For me, I usually teach my learners, if I'm introducing a new tool for my lessons, I usually teach them how to use it. So for instance, WhatsApp groups, that's the very common one. I teach my learners how to respond using voice notes. I teach them how to respond using emojis. So if there's a lesson going on, I allow only admins to write. So the learners would only use emojis. Some of them don't know how to use the emojis, so I just do a short screen recording and share it, and they learn how to use the emoji. So if I say this is the emoji I want, they respond. If I say you use a general emoji, they do that. So I usually teach them, this is what we're going to be using. This is how I want you to respond to me. And when I started using Canva too, I taught my learners how to use Canva. I showed them, this is it, this is what we could do with it. When I learned how to use CapCut, I shared with my learners. So for instance, I'm teaching a comprehension passage and I give this group, you're going to create pictures for this. This group, you're going to do this group, you're going to do this. They already know how to use CapCut for their private videos, but they don't know how to use it for lessons. So I show them, those pictures, those videos you shared on Facebook, you could do this with our lessons. So generate pictures for me. You do this, you do this, you do this. And the next class, I have my teaching aids. I don't need to do all the work alone. And they're excited doing this.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I mean, it's giving them, like you say, it's tools, the skills and the tools, not just for the classroom, but beyond as well. Fantastic. Well, we haven't had any other questions come in, but just before I pass back over to Blessing Epum, thank you again, Salome, for a fantastic chat.
Thank you.
Like I say, lots of highly practical tips that people can take away. So just before we finish, I'm going to be adding a little stream of links into the chat. So you can join Blessing Epum's Edu-P Hangout on WhatsApp. There is a training course coming up in November, so she'll be sharing more details of that soon. We'll be sharing the recording of this session over on the YouTube channel. So click on that so that you've got it saved so that you can access it in the future. And then a couple of previous sessions that you might be interested in catching up on. So the first Edu-P Hangout event that Blessing organized was talking about bullying. So you can find more information there. And then recently Blessing did a session for a group that I run, all about building the homeschool connection. Okay, so that's something, it's a key topic that we've been talking about within special educational needs, within emotional intelligence, within digital tools, building that homeschool connection. And just a reminder as well that you can find Blessing Epham over on, well, you can find the Edu-P Hangout over on Instagram. And you can also find Blessing on Instagram and on Facebook if you'd like to connect. Thank you very much, everyone who's joined us this afternoon. I'm going to hand back over now to Blessing Epham for a few final words.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Teresa. Best speak. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our wonderful presenters tonight. Sally, thank you for that amazing presentation. Very practical indeed. Rashida Sadiq, oh my. I see all the comments in the chat. And Mabel, wow. Who could have done that better? Talking about special education needs. You know, that's a challenge for so many teachers, especially here in Africa, where some parents still live in denial, okay, and some still attach so many spiritual interpretations to all of this. So it's very, very essential that we are educated about special education needs. And if we have school leaders that are in this conference tonight, I encourage you to get in touch with more people like Mabel, yeah, who could come to your school and have some of these programs for your educators. And even emotional intelligence, very, very important, you know, in this day and time. You see teachers, you know, having burnouts and so many issues in the school system. So we have wonderful presenters like Rashida Sadiq. Who doesn't want to listen to Rashida? You know, so you can get in touch with them. And if the presenters are still here,
Don't know if we've lost Blessing's audio there. Yep, so Salome and Mabel and Rashida, if you'd like to share your LinkedIn or your Facebook or any other way that people can contact you, that would be fantastic as well. There's lots of thank yous coming in. So yes, again, thank you to all three presenters. And thank you all as well for giving up your Sunday evenings to come and join us and to pick up some new ideas for the next academic year. Wishing you all a good start to the next year and hope it all goes well for you all. Yep, so the recording will soon be on Blessing's YouTube channel. Have a great evening, everyone. Good luck tomorrow if it's your first day back at school. And thank you again to Blessing Epham for organising the event.